they'll tune you in where we are.
It is the it is the 5th of November, Rabbi Furst, Tana deBei Eliyahu.
Very good. Thank you, Louis. And as Louis mentioned, this is again Rabbi Shomer first here, Shiva Tzamala, Shiva Shalem Care of Zoom. And we learned time to be, as Lou mentioned, and we're in the middle of this paragraph. It's in the middle of, towards, I think, three paragraphs finishing from the end of the second page. And we're discussing, Lou, Mary asked the question. I'll show you where it is in the text, but the question basically is, if a Kadosh Baruch Hu is essentially abstract and non-physical, right? How can you blame people for worshiping the sun, the moon, stones, and wood? They chose to worship things which are concrete. They chose things which they can relate to, right? And that was a terrible mistake on the part of humanity, both individually and also collectively. As we'll see, if you see there, we see where it says that where the green bowl, the green background is. We say Akarkach, right? Bora. This is where we're learning now. Akarkach Bora Esa Adam Ubarla Olam. Afterwards, the Kadosh Baruch Hu created Adam, and he brought him into the world. V'lo Bora Ela Almanas Shavdinu V'leiv Shalom. And he was only created. Adam was only created in order that he should serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu honestly, V'leiv Shalom, with an honest, true heart. So Korah's ruach mimenu utuldosav. Habois akrav ad sof kol dos, and that Hashem should receive satisfaction, contentment from him, Adam, and all his offspring that come after him until the end of all generations. Oh, but now what happened? The plan was a good plan, but people took a wrong turn. They took a wrong turn. That's where it starts over, and this is the beginning of what we were just discussing, which I'll review with you in a moment. But this is what the wrong turn took place. Kavan Shipuruvu, since humanity started to be fruitful and multiply, this one went and started worshiping the sun and the moon. This one started worshiping wood and stones. And each and every day they were getting deeper and deeper into their obligation, decree of destruction. Okay, so at this point, as I said before, Mary asked this question, an excellent question. Why should they be obligated in such a thing? They're choosing to worship things which are concrete, right, which they can relate to. And it was difficult for them to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was abstract. So in part of the beginning of my answer, we're in the middle of the answer now, as this was exactly the paradox that Avram Avinu had to face in his generation. The world was filled with people worshiping false idols, the concrete, physical things they can relate to. And Avram Avinu had to turn them around and bring them to the understanding and the belief and the obedience to Kadosh Baruch Hu was essentially unknown and abstract. So how could he do it? So the beginning of the answer to the question is first of all, Adam has been created with a great deal of brain space. We have been blessed more than any other creatures in creation with brain space disproportionately greater to the rest of our body than any other species. As I just got through saying, for example, humans have brain space of 2% compared to the rest of their body, right? Doesn't seem like that, right? Doesn't seem like your brain is only 2% of your body, but according to, I guess, what they figured it out, that's the information I was given, right? Humans have basically, in proportion to the rest of their body, 2% brain space. A dolphin, for example, has 1.2% brain space, which is almost half, right? Half brain space. Mice have 1% brain space, which is exactly half brain space compared to the rest of its body. Elephants have 0.2, that big old elephant there his brain space compared to the rest of his body is 0.2%. Right? So we have been blessed with a great deal of potential for intelligence, for memory, understanding, imagination. We have been blessed with a extra special amount of brain capability, intelligent capability, and it's all there for us to use that extra brain space to acknowledge the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is abstract, he's unseen, non-physical, we have been given all the tools to achieve a understanding as much as humanly possible of Kadosh Baruch Hu. And other species don't need to. They don't need to acknowledge the Kadosh Baruch Hu. They simply need their brains to function, to get them through the ins and outs of living in the physical world, right? And Hashem gives them exactly much brain space and brain potential and intelligence that they need to successfully get their food, protect themselves, and do whatever else they need in order to physically survive. But that's not our purpose in life. Our purpose in life, as we see in the very first line, Lo bora ela almanat she'avdunu b'lev shalom. We've only been created in order that we should serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu truthfully, honestly. That is our purpose in being here. And for that, you need a lot of brain space. So how did Avram Avinu attack his generation, which was steeped in avodah zarah and idol worship, false idols? They were all worshiping false idols, right? From the kings, his father, down to the most common people. So one thing, well, you read the Medrash says he was tending to his father's shop, and his father was one of the main suppliers of idols in the time. And Avram Avinu was he was there tending to the shop. People would come in. The Medrash says a strong guy, a wrestler came in to buy an idol. A wrestler came into the shop to buy an idol. He says hello to Avram Avinu. He says, hello, what can I do for you today? He says, I'm a wrestler. I need an idol that's a strong idol that I can worship and make myself strong and victorious over my enemies and opponents in war and in battle and in contest. So he said to him, oh, look at this big one. We've got this one big here in the corner. He's a big, brawny piece of wood, and you'll do well. You'll take care of what you need. He's strong, you'll be strong. So he pays the money. He's on the way out the door, and he says, Avram Avinu says to him, wait a second. Let me tell you. I want to ask you a question. Tell me, how old are you? He asked the wrestler, how old are you? He says, I'm 35 years old. He said, oh, you're 35 years old. So I want to ask you a question. You know, we just made this idol. This idol was made yesterday. This idol is a day old. So let me ask you something. Why in the world a person who's 35 years old is going to now worship this idol which was made yesterday? Doesn't seem to be much sense in that. So the wrestler takes a double take, starts thinking. He's using that brain, that 2% brain that he's got. Maybe since he's a wrestler, he's got more muscles or more than the regular person. So maybe his brain space is 1.8 instead of 2% average. So he starts thinking. I said, you're right. I'm 35 years old. This idol you say was made yesterday. It's a little bit silly, a little bit immature that I should start worshiping an idol which was made yesterday when I'm years and years, decades older than it. So he said to me, well, so what should I do? He says, listen to what I have to say. And so Avram Avinu started giving him shirim, started softening him up. We'll get to that soon, how he did it. The Medrash continues on. A woman comes in. Well, she's an actress. She's an actress. She wants an idol that's going to make her beautiful and have charm, so she can charm the audiences and the directors and the producers. So she says, she comes in there to the Avram Avinu, you have some kind of an idol that would make me beautiful and charming, captivating? So he says, yeah, sure, take a look at this one. This is a beautiful idol made of gold and silver inlay. Beautiful, such form, such grace. You take this That's for you. She says, he pays money on the way out of the door. He says, wait a second, tell me something, lady. How old are you? She says, I'm 23 years old. She says, you're 23 years old. Wow, you know something? This idol was made 3 days ago. Doesn't seem strange that you, who's 23 years old, is going to worship this idol that was only made 3 days ago. Sounds a little strange, no? She starts thinking. Says, yeah, you're right. You know, it's a little strange. Why should I be bowing down to this idol that I'm more than 23 years old older than it? A little strange. She says, okay, so listen, I got some things to tell you. Listen to what I have to say. So she started listening. And slowly and surely, he would wean all these people away from their false gods and false beliefs. And so how did he do it? So there are various Sfarim that have recorded through Midrashim and other sources of Chazal, how Avraham slowly and surely began to work on the people in his generation and turn them around from being idol worshippers into being honest servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And one of the main strategies that Avraham used was as follows. He would tell people, take a look. I want you to take a look at something. Take a look at a hatchet. You got a hatchet, right? There's a hatchet. A nice, sharp axe head, right? And it's got a nice, strong wood handle attached very strongly. And you take this hatchet and you start whacking away at that tree, and you can down the tree. Whack away long enough, you can down the tree. So this hatchet has power, right? People say, yes, this hatchet has power. It can down a tree. Says, you're wrong. The hatchet has no power whatsoever. Say, what do you mean the hatchet has no power whatsoever? Says, take this hatchet and put it on the table. Okay, now, let that hatchet go to work. What's that hatchet going to do now? Going to do nothing at all. It's going to sit on the table, right? As Newton says, what did Newton say? An object remains at rest unless it's impregnated by some other. What's the Newton's formula? One of his laws there. An object remains at rest until it's something or other, right?
By another outside force.
So Newton knew a little bit something about what's going on here, and he got it probably from Avraham Avinu. The object, that hatchet's going to stay right where it is. It's not going to do a thing. Not going to do a thing until an outside force acts upon it. And who's that? Someone's got to pick it up. Someone's got to pick that hatchet up. And that person is not even picking up that hatchet. It's not going to do a thing until that person makes up his mind he wants to wield this axe against the tree. So that hatchet is absolutely helpless, absolutely powerless. There's no power in that hatchet whatsoever. The power of that hatchet remains in the hands of the person who wants to use that hatchet. So he went through all these kind of examples, hatchets, saws, bows and arrows, right? And he continued on till he got to the sun and the moon. He got to the sun and the moon, and he said, the sun and the moon, they have nothing, they can do nothing until the great creator who created everything acts upon them and commands them to do what they're supposed to do. And so slowly and surely, people began to use that great mass of brain cells that they have in their skulls for serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So since we've been created with such a massive intelligence, and if we're only guided in the proper way to use that intelligence, we will eventually come to an understanding and an acknowledgement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then we go on the way of serving him. So that's why, even though you might take the easy, uneducated, idiotic way of serving idols, the sun and the moon, wood and stone, because those things you can easily relate to, right? It's like children playing with toys. Children are very fascinated with toys when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Very fascinated with toys. But if I'd say, listen, this afternoon, 2 o'clock, come over to my house. We're gonna play with Lego for a couple of hours. I don't think you fellows would be very interested in doing such a thing like that. You know? If we were 6 years old, I said, you can have soda and ice cream also. Oh, I'd have a whole group of kids outside the door of my apartment lined up, right? Soda and ice cream and Lego. That's cool. Balloons. I'll give out balloons too. Right? Then that's kid stuff. That's for kids. But at one point or another, the person has to grow up and realize, you know, soda and ice cream and Lego and balloons is not exactly what life's all about. It's good for kids, but not for adults. So Avinu injected into his generation an understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu based on the intelligent look at what's going on in the universe around us. So that's because there's enough information in the universe around us that we should be able to come by using our brain properly. We should be able to come to an acknowledgement and appreciation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we don't, so the reasons why we don't are because we might be influenced by other things. We might be influenced by false beliefs. We might be influenced by desires for this world, and then we choose not to acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu because we think if we're going to spend our time serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we'll have less time serving ourselves and our own pleasures. But that's not true. Right? People who decide that they want to serve their own pleasures, they get deeper and deeper into serving their own pleasures, and their lives go off course. That they lose track of what the real purpose of life is. And when a person's got on an off course, when his life is on off course, so there's no telling where a person might wind up. Or actually, it's very clearly where a person's going to wind up. You're not going to kina type of a kavod notziasa adam mina olam, as we say many times based on the Mishnah in Avos. Kina type of a kavod notziasa adam. Kina, jealousy, taiva, lust, kavod, prestige. People, these are the three major motivations that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created us with. These have been created within us. A person has been created to be jealous. He's been created with lusts. He's been created to want prestige. Why? Because you need these things to get things moving. People would simply lie in bed and not accomplish anything if they weren't jealous, if they didn't have lusts, and if they didn't want prestige. If the person were lacking all those things, people would just lie in bed, and as long as they would get some food once in a while, they'd be completely satisfied. But no, people are not satisfied with that because we're motivated by kina taiva v'kavod. But these things, if they're left unchecked, meaning, and the only way to check kina taiva v'kavod and all the other different variations of a person's midos, characteristics, personality traits, emotions, and feelings, a person can only check these things and keep them in control through Torah. Torah is the medium by which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us, as Chazal say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created the Yetzer Hara and he's created the Tavlin, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Yetzer Hara, and it's like a wound that a person has, and he's created the Torah as the Tavlin. He's created the remedy for the Yetzer Hara, meaning if you have the proper medicines, you have the proper bandages, so if a person gets a wound, he can control it, and it'll be eventually healing. But if he doesn't treat it properly, it'll fester, it'll grow, become more painful and serious. So Kadosh Baruch Hu has created the Yetzer Hara. He has created us with kina taiva v'kavod, and he wants us to have those things, but he wants us more than ever anything else to have Torah to control those things, because once we control those things, then we can accomplish in life for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the whole point. As we were that's the first line on this paragraph we started. Lo bara ela la'almanash yivdinu alev shalom. Adam and all his offspring, humanity, for all generations, were only created in order that we should serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with an honest heart. So therefore, since they went ahead and now we're worshiping the Chama, the sun and the moon, Zel Ovid, Eitz Ve'evin, this one would worship wood and stone. Yom v'yom, each and every day, Mischayvin Kali Lefonav. Each and every day they were digging their graves deeper and deeper. They were becoming more and more obligated uh, against HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wishes. Okay. Um, let's continue on. That'll bring us to the third line in that paragraph. Kishu Chayzer.
Can I interject something?
Sure.
Um, I want to actually strengthen the question that Meir asked. Um, we've learned. I forget exactly the source, but maybe it's a midrash. I'm not sure, but I remember learning that initially when people uh, started worshiping idols, they had um, they had the best intentions. Um, they they believed in Hashem, uh, but like Meir said, it's abstract. It's hard to get a grip on. So they said, let's honor Hashem through His creations. For example, the sun. The sun is not a god. The sun is a creation of Hashem, and look how marvelous a creation it is. So my question is, how come that approach uh, goes so wrong? Why can't that work? That a person says, "I believe in Hashem," and I'm worshiping Him through the concrete manifestations of His creation.
So, very good. Very, very important question. Um, First way I think would to answer this question would be that it's all it's all very nice and good theoretically, but since since we've been told, we've been commanded not to worship idols, not to worship anything except the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning, let me put it this way: Rabbi Yerucham, the Mishkir from Meir Zechon Bracha, says that every mitzvah there's a Yetzer Hara against every mitzvah. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a mitzvah, right? People have a desire to steal. Shem says, "Do not steal." Right? People have a desire to speak lashon hara. Hashem says, "Do not speak lashon hara." People have a desire to work. Hashem says, "You're going to keep Shabbos." Right? All go through all of them. Some may be more apparent than others, but in each and every case, you'll find some type of a reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu is commanding, right, various different things. So Kadosh Baruch Hu commanded us not to worship idols, meaning there's a very good reason why you should worship the idols, right? We're talking about not the stupid idols. We're talking about it like at the very beginning, as you mentioned. The very beginning, they had probably the most rational, most intelligent, most well thought of, well intentioned reasons why they wanted to start worshiping the sun, the moon, all kinds of different idols. They had wonderful explanations, wonderful intentions, right? But in spite of that fact, HaKadosh Baruch said, no, you're not supposed to do that. Okay, so first of all, there's obviously Yetzer Hara to do that, right? And Hashem's saying, since you've got this Yetzer Hara, right, I'm going to tell you you're not going to do it. I don't want you to do it. Right? You may have very good, 100% honest, tremendous, wonderful reasons for doing it, but I am commanding you not to do it. So, okay, what can we do? Right? Hashem doesn't want us to eat on Yom Kippur, so you're hungry, but what can I do? Right? Hashem doesn't want me to eat on Yom Kippur. I can't eat on Yom Kippur. Hashem doesn't want me to eat chametz on Pesach, so I can't have my cake. I can't have my pizza. Can't have my macaroni and, right? I have to eat matzah. I would like to do differently, but my job in this world is to listen to the commands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have a command not to worship idols, not to make images, right? Hashem doesn't want us to go that route, right? So, in spite of the good reasons we may have for it, what can we do? HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this existence. He created us in this existence. He's the boss, and he gave us the rules, right? So that just happens to be one of the rules. So you're right. In theory, you're right. There could be very good reasons for doing it. And at the beginning, as I said, it's most likely and it's most true that they had the best intentions whatsoever, but still they were not fulfilling the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was that they should not do this. So that's the first, I think, first approach to how to answer your question, Lou. I mean, is that helpful?
Not really, because it's a very generic answer. I mean, yeah, I understand. Anytime we do what Hashem says don't do, we're going to be in trouble. I understand that, but that applies to many situations. But I'm asking specifically about this one situation.
But Lou, it's very obvious. Hashem says, "Don't worship my creatures," because He sees the end is you're going to make them avodah zarah. He knows that's going to happen, and He says you're not going to worship me properly by worshiping my creatures, my creations, because you will make them gods, and that will cause you to be involved in avodah zarah. Yes, I understand why you want to do it, but I know what the end is going to be. The end is going to be you'll make them avodah zarahs. Therefore, don't do it.
No, but you're missing the whole point of Meir's question. Meir's question is, doesn't this make sense? Hashem is incorporeal. He's abstract. And we need to grasp onto something. And I'm strengthening that question by saying, why did Hashem structure it in such a way that something that makes a lot of sense doesn't work right? Yeah, Hashem said don't do it, so we can't do it. I understand that, but why did Hashem say don't do it? Why did Hashem structure the world in this way?
Why did He say don't eat pork? I mean, it's the same question. Why did He say don't eat pork? Why did He say don't eat shellfish? Give me, there's not, logical reasons not to do that. Why do you say don't wear shatnez? He gave us a set of commands. He says, this is the way I want you to practice. This is the way I want you to serve me. You can do X, you can do Y, you can't do Z. It's really not up to us to ask why Hashem created or made the laws the way He did. Okay, our service to Him is to do what He asks us to do, the way He asks us to do it, and to not do what He told us not to do. Okay, that's how you serve Hashem. You can always ask questions. Why did Hashem tell us not to wear shatnez? Give me a good reason why we shouldn't wear shatnez. I can't think of one. But Hashem told us not to do it, so we don't do it. And we make sure that our clothes gets checked to make sure there's no shatnez in it. And if it is, we take it out. Okay, but there's not a great, I can't think of a logical reason not to do it. But that doesn't say, I don't spend my life thinking, well, boy, why shouldn't I wear shatnez? It's just dumb. Hashem told us not to wear shatnez, so we don't wear shatnez. Hashem told us to eat kosher, we eat kosher. He told us not to eat pork, we don't do it. You can always ask the question, why did Hashem do that? Most of what he did it is for us to control ourselves and not do things that he didn't ask. If Hashem permitted us to do everything, then serving Hashem wouldn't mean anything because there's no restrictions. The idea of serving Hashem is to funnel your actions into the ways that Hashem asked us to act.
That's exactly the point. The point is, very good, Eliyahu. The point is that if we were allowed, let's say, if we were allowed to worship idols, let's say Hashem didn't have we can worship idols, and also let's say in the very best form that there's simply we're worshiping the representatives of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We all acknowledge that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one in absolute power, but he has lots of representatives in this world, people who carry in things which carry out his will, and we're gonna worship the representatives. And we're gonna do that in the best and possible and in the absolute most possible way possible. We'd be seriously lacking in what a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to accomplish in life. Hashem wants us to worship him. He wants us to acknowledge him. Our job is not to acknowledge the representatives of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's not important to us, and that's not important to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Just like when we're following any of the other mitzvahs, like Eliyahu said, we are doing that because that's the command of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that is our success. Our success in life is to follow the dictates and the commands of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And to the extent that we do that honestly, that's going to be our success, right? And so Hashem brought us into this world so we can have the maximum success in serving him. And to have the maximum success in serving him, it's detrimental if we would be allowed to worship idols.
So you're now partially dealing with my issue and partially not. So let me focus on the part that's not. We said Naseh v'nishma. So according to what I'm hearing, we really shouldn't have said v'nishma. We should have just said Naseh, we'll do. And we won't question because Hashem said so. So Hashem said so, we'll do it. But that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem doesn't want me to be an automaton that just follows what he says without questioning. We refer to Hashem as Ribono Shel Olam, the Rabbi of the universe. Hashem is the ultimate teacher. Everything Hashem does is to teach us. And we're only going to learn if we ask questions.
Right.
Okay.
We're not saying not to ask questions. You need to understand how to serve Hashem correctly. But Hashem has given us guidelines on how to serve him correctly. You serve him correctly by doing what he asks you to do. You serve him correctly by not doing what he tells you not to do. Okay. Yes, you need to study. You need
by asking why I'm not doing what he told me not to do.
No, you ask how, not why. How is a valid question to ask. How do I do this correctly? How do I eat kosher? How do I not wear shaddai? You ask that question of how. The why is not as critical. The how is much more important.
Yeah, but the why may not be as important or as critical, but it still exists. It's still appropriate to ask why.
You can ask why, but ultimately the ultimate answer is because this is simply the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the ultimate answer, right? Now, if you want to discover the wisdom behind why we don't wear shatnez, and the Svarim will tell you, even though it is a chok. What does it mean? It's a chok. It's a statute which apparently has no reason, but you can give reasons to it. You can explain. The Svarim do give reasons. The shatnez, for example, wool comes from animals. Pishtan, flax, comes from that which grows from the ground. That which grows from the animal and grows from the ground, they are diametrically opposed to each other in ways that we do not understand. there are those that may understand it, but in ways that I don't understand, right? The forces which cause hair to grow on the back of a sheep are completely different than the forces that cause plants to grow from the ground. And I think you could probably talk to a botanist, and you could probably talk to someone who knows about things in terms of how things grow on that they're completely different and they're different forces, and you
But
don't
it's
want to
even more
combine.
so. It's even more so because you look at cotton. Cotton grows from the ground. Cotton you can mix with wool. Hashem doesn't say don't mix cotton with wool. I mean,
So very
it's
good. Yeah,
there's something very esoteric that says don't mix linen and wool. It's not something we're obviously going to understand because it doesn't say
because
don't mix cotton with wool. It doesn't say that. And nobody holds you can't mix cotton with wool. Nobody even thinks it's a chumrah anyway. We do it. So there's something very esoteric about it. We may never understand it. Most people never understand it, but that doesn't prevent us from following it.
that's exactly it. That's the whole beauty of Nasa Vinishma. The Nasa always comes first. We are doing it now. You want to explain it? Okay, I'll try to I'll make an attempt to explain it. So I'll explain shatnez being growing from animals and flax growing from the ground. But wait, if that's the case, if that's your explanation, so Eliezer Tzvi comes along and asks the kasha, well, cotton grows from the ground, so how can I wear it with wool that grows from the animal? So I have to refine my answer, right? And you can get deeper and deeper into your answer, and perhaps ultimately you'll never really reach the truth of the answer, but you'll begin to understand through that the wonders of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You understand the wonders of how things grow on animals and the wonders of things how grow from the ground. And it could be, if you understand what's the difference between flax, maybe there's something specifically unique about flax, physically speaking, perhaps, and certainly, definitely, spiritually, definitely so. One came from Cain, one came from Hevel. One he offered flax, and he offered from the animals, and therefore then they had a fight, and they killed one and the other, and then all because of that. So you'll go into other explanations, and you'll understand much more about the wisdom of Kadosh Baruch Hu and how He created the world, right? But that's all very good, but it doesn't stop us, as you said, Elias. It's very accurate. It doesn't stop us from doing it. That Rav Scheinberg Zechon Baruch used to bring down a mashal to explain it. There was a philosopher, a very great philosopher, and he spent his whole life understanding everything. He never wanted to do anything until he understood it fully. So one day he had a certain condition, something kind of health condition. He had to go to a doctor. And the doctor gave him a prescription. So the philosopher spent days and days and days trying to understand the prescription before because he wasn't following. He wasn't going to fill the prescription and take the prescription until he understood it. So unfortunately, his time ran out before he could understand the prescription. His time in this world ran out before he could fully understand the prescription because he was more interested in understanding it than doing it. That's not our derech. Our derech is we do it. We do it because it's a command from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are many things to learn from it. You can ask questions, right? But ultimately, what Hashem wants is us, as it says in this very first line in this paragraph we're joining, Lo bora ella almanah she'avdu b'leiv shalom. We only are created that we should serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu honestly. We have a job in this world to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person, he never asked a question about why you should do a mitzvah. He did all the mitzvahs. He's in great shape. A person could ask all the questions but never do a mitzvah. He's in terrible shape. Right? So that's our job. That's our job. Okay, I tell you, if we can continue this. It's a big discussion. Lamaisa, it's not a short discussion. Think about it. If there are any loose ends, remind me at the beginning of tomorrow, and we'll pick up some loose ends if we want tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eliyahu. Have a good afternoon, and we'll continue shortly. Mr. Bruce here. Bezrat Hashem.
Okay, see you in a few minutes.
Okay, very good. Thank you both. See you soon.
Okay.